Hello, I'm Bruce Swalski. I'm author of Canadian Wilderness Survival and chief instructor of the Boreal Wilderness Institute. And today, I want to add into our focus on survival gear series by talking about cold weather headgear and toques. So if you like to learn real survival knowledge, then please support me by following me on YouTube and liking this video. So I want to talk about the toque. And of course, in the US, you might call it a beanie. It might be called a number of things, but I want to talk about toques and headgear in general. And I want to start with material. So the first thing I'm going to do is give you a rundown of what materials we might have for our headgear. And then I'll talk about design and some good and bad points about each, because no piece of headgear is ever going to be perfect. But headgear, like toques and other hats, for cold weather is essential survival gear. And that's one of the reasons why clothing as a whole group is critical item number one on my list of critical items, because it can save you even if you're unconscious. And the headgear, of course, is incredibly important. We lose a large amount of our heat through our head. Now, naked inside a tank, you're losing 40% of your heat from head and neck. But from a clothed individual in temperatures below -15, you're going to lose 75% of your heat. So as you put on extra clothing, more and more of the heat's going to go there because you can't completely cover that up. And we'll talk a little bit about how that works. So let's talk about the base materials. First and foremost, in natural materials would be wool. So this is some merino wool. This is a merino wool neck scarf or head over. And that merino wool retains, like all wools, retains 80% of its loft when wet and is fairly heavy when wet and takes a little while to dry. But it still gives you 80% of its loft. Heavier wools like this wool toque can do the same thing. In this case, though, this is a hybrid design, and it's got a scarf, or a band, really, made of thin slite. So it's got a thin slite band, which I'll show you, talk about that in a second when we get to that. So a heavier wool one like that is still going to work. It's going to have the same problem. When it gets wet, it can get really wet, right? That's just the way it is. But it'll still give you 80% of your loft. Then you have fur, and fur comes in different grades. So we have something like this, which is my bigger, heavier fur hat, and it's really, really nice hat. If I thin it out something like this muskrat hat, it has half the warmth. What's the advantage of the fur, though? Fur is incredibly wind friendly. In other words, it cuts the wind. It does an incredible job of that. And so in wetter conditions and in super windy conditions, that fur hat is a lifesaver. And of course, it can be adjusted. Most of these ones have a design like this, so I can flap it down over my ears and even tie it up down there, or flip it back and adjust it up and down my head, depending on how much of my ears, and then tie it up here, I want to protect. So one of the advantages, and we've had a big cold snap in Edmonton lately, and I've been out a lot walking, and I'm taking my fur hat all the time, and I just slip it down over. A bigger fur hat, like this one, will do a better job. And I can, as you see, this is adjusted so that I can slip that back down, right? What's the other advantage of fur? 100% recyclable and 100% functional, assuming that your fur comes from a decent source. In other words, the next generation of animals will come back, and the First Nations hunters who are hunting most of them, and the trappers out there in Canada can keep a living. So yeah, in some of these First Nations communities, it's the only income they have. So I've got no problems with it at all. You can also get a hybrid hat like this, and so this is an example. You see a lot of them, and I got about 3 or 4 of them, different ones. Most of them have rabbit fur. That's the most common. What's the problem with rabbit fur? It's not very good fur, right? And does it work? Absolutely. Same thing. And I can flip this little piece off so I can get it off. And again, flip it down here, right? Complete ear flaps and everything else. You see that? This is reinforced. Some of them are better. This one's even got a little space so you can get a little bit of ear for hearing, which is all cool. I'm not sure how much I really care about that. I generally just like to be warm, but you know, there's that thing. So it's not a bad hat. Lots of these in around, and you can get them anywhere, and you know, they're decent enough hats, but when you compare this, yeah, this is probably 4 times the price, right? Yeah, I mean, you know, I bought it up in Yellowknife. It was definitely more expensive, but it's also 4 times the hat. So there's fur. Then we get into fleece. And in fleece, we have what would be standard pile or thing, and it's a synthetic fleece. Now, what a real fleece would look like this Helly Hansen one, where I actually have fur in the back. And that fur is going to make a big difference. Now, this hat is the balaclava design without the face. But it's going to be a lot warmer, and this fleece, as in that furry fleece, has twice the functional warmth as this fleece here, right? So that's going to make a difference. I don't know what my hair looks like, but I don't really care. So here's the deal, guys. Fleece like this, if you had furry fleece, twice the warmth. What's the problem? Most of the time you won't see much like that. Helly Hansen still makes it, but it didn't pass the fashion war. Acrylic like this is synthetic, but it doesn't necessarily have the same warmth as this. Now, what's the deal? 100% synthetic, still better. Better grades of fleece are going to be a little bit better, and design's going to be different. So here I have that, but you'll notice that I can only flip this thing down so far, right? It doesn't really have it's not a very big toque. So I'm almost always going to have to add in a neck scarf or a head over. That's the same design you see here. It's actually, this isn't wool, this is an acrylic again, but lined with Thinsulite. So Thinsulite is a pasty kind of fabric, and it works for its thickness. It has a lot of warmth, not for its weight. So no one, or not no one, but almost no one's going to make Thinsulite jackets. That doesn't mean they haven't, but they're just not very efficient or effective. But a Thinsulite gloves makes sense. Thinsulite lining in our boots makes sense. And every so often we'll see Thinsulite here. And there's nothing wrong with that. And again, in this wool toque, they put a Thinsulite headband so that the idea is that an extra warmth where you really, really need it right in here, and excellent wind protection as well, because Thinsulite's pretty good for that. There's a simple fleece hat, same kind of thing, but you know, this is like a hunting season kind of thing. It's not going to do in extreme cold weather. I could also have something like this, which is a full heavy version of that. And in this case, it's a double-lined hood. And I've used these before for sleeping at night in crappy sleeping bags. So if my sleeping bag doesn't cover my head, or if it's super cold out, I can put a double-layer fleece hood on like this and make a big, big difference. Some of them will even have a front piece that goes over. And that's the same thing on this, where you're getting just a neck scarf piece. Right? That's the added incentive. If your hood or your thing isn't working, you want something like that. It can work slightly better than just a standard scarf, right? Because I take a standard fleece scarf like this, and I got a whole bunch of them. It's not really a lot of material, right? There's just not a lot here, where if I take something like this and pull it over, I've got a double layer of fleece. It's going to be warmer, and it's going to stop the wind really, really well. What's the other advantage? I can turn this into a face mask, right? And right now, face masks are kind of handy to have around, so it works out well. So if I'm looking for headgear, the most basic is just a standard toque, right? A beanie, if you want to call it that. I can move up to a reinforced one. It can be wool or it can be fleece. I can move up to a whole balaclava design. Or what I prefer is something like this, which is a lighter weight head over as a backup. And I have polypo and merino wool head overs. They work really, really nice. I like them better than the small neck scarves like these, because that doesn't go all the way here. When I have something like this, I have a huge advantage. I can put it on, and I can put there or here and move that up. I can put it right over my face. I can tuck it in like this, and I can use it and carry on. I can even just barely put my glasses back on and operate there. Right? You know, but that's functional, right? And that's going to keep me alive and warm. I can tuck it in, everything else. I may get foggy glasses, but that's life. But that's the double system, right? And that's going to make a difference. Stop thinking of a headgear as totally one piece, because it's not. Headgear is not a one-piece system. Headgear is something that you're going to have a toque backed up by neck scarves, balaclavas, fur hats, scarves, whatever. And if it's cold enough, you might end up with 3 pieces of gear on, because that's it. Because I could have taken both of those and still added a scarf, couldn't I? And have before. Because if it's 40 or 50 below, you're going to want that extra warmth and the versatility. And that's why a couple of things, because that would be my standard stuff to take in cold weather, and then I'd ditch this once it gets warm, and I'd still have the toque, I'd still have the head over, but I'd have my scarf as well. And so now you're talking up to 3 pieces of headgear at once, but it's going to make a difference. So, is headgear essential? Yeah, that's year-round clothing. Yes, this is year-round clothing. Those are the 2 things I don't ditch, my head over and my toque. Everything up from that, including big, heavy balaclavas like this for sleeping at night in your sleeping bag, are going to make a big difference to how comfortable you are. And remember, headgear is a year-round thing we take all the time, and we have to take it seriously. It's like gloves. You're going to die. You're going to get frostbite. You're going to run into problems when you don't have that gear. So it's something we take all the time. Do you need good toques? Do you need good materials? Yes. What material didn't you see at all here? You saw 1 ounce of cotton. Everything was fur, wool, or good quality synthetic. And that means 100% synthetic or acrylic, 0% cotton. That's just the way it works. So, is it a critical item? Yeah. Toque and head over all the time. The rest of the heavy gear depends on how cold it is and how miserable it is and what you have the ability to carry. But take it with you, understand it, and make sure you have it in the wilderness. So, if you like this life-saving knowledge you learn on this channel, then please support me by following me on YouTube, listening and liking to other videos on this channel, and by following me at the Boreal Wellness Institute on Facebook. Thank you, stay safe, and if you're stranded in the wilderness, just remember, stop and survive.